Sup folks, welcome to the part 13, of What If Deku Become a Healer Hero, Chapter 35. It's nighttime when he finally claws his way back to consciousness. Blinking groggily, he turns his head to see that Inko and Aizawa are still sitting by his bedside, but there's a third person. Recovery Girl. As soon as their gazes meet, her beady eyes fill to the brim with tears and she reaches out to grip his hand tightly. The kiss that she plants firmly on his forehead has nothing to do with her quirk. He asks about All Might. She huffs and tells him that he's doing fine, that she left Sir Nighttime to watch over him. She'll have to go back and check on him later, but it's Izuku she's worried about. His wounds ache, but that's to be expected. He's mostly just hungry and still pretty tired, even though he apparently slept for 18 hours, which surprises the hell out of him. Although, considering all that happened, it probably shouldn't. Recovery Girl has a nurse bring over a quick meal for him while Aizawa ducks into the hallway to call Detective Tsukaki. And then the next thing he knows, he's being debriefed on his time with the League of Villains. Principal Netsu arrives with Tsukaki and he, the detective, and Aizawa sit in plastic chairs at the end of Izuku's bed while Inko and Recovery Girl sit beside him. Izuku holds his mother's hand, taking a deep breath to steady himself. Of course, he knew this was coming. He knew he would have to talk about everything. He just hopes he actually can. A cold weight settles in his stomach, apprehension curdling deep. Detective Tsukaki leans forward and asks his first question. "Can you tell us what happened after you were taken?" Izuku blinks. A hot hand on the back of his neck dragging him through a portal. Being forced to the ground, bound, gagged. Shigaraki, Shigaraki, Shigaraki. He squeezes his mother's hand. His mouth opens, but only a thin whine comes out. It's pathetic and embarrassing and he clamps his jaws shut immediately, cheeks burning. Recovery Girl jumps to his defense. His throat has gone through far too much trauma recently. He was supposed to be taking it easy and doing speech therapy after the mall incident, but he must have had to push his voice past its limit these past few days. Isn't that right? Izuku nods, head ducked. Recovery Girl TSKS. Well, it'll do you no good to stress it out even further now by telling us a long story. Is there anything he can write with? Inko perks up and reaches into her purse. Here. She pulls out Izuku's phone, slightly cracked, but miraculously still intact, and pushes it into his hands. His surprise must show on his face because she explains, "One of the firefighters found it by chance while putting out the fires in the forest and turned it in. When they discovered that it belonged to you, they gave it to me." He turns it on and discovers about 100 missed messages and calls from practically everyone on his contacts list. Wincing, he ignores them all and clicks on his notes app. When it opens, he glances up at Detective Tsukaki imploringly, as if to ask if this is all right. His throat really is killing him and his voice doesn't sound too great, especially after fighting for his life and having a couple of panic attacks. Realizing that he's looking for permission, Tsukaki startles and nods. "Oh, of course, of course. Whatever is easier for you, Midoriya-kun. If one of you could read as he types, though, that would be great." Recovery Girl agrees, and then it's up to Izuku to start typing. What happened to him after he was taken? His thumb hovers over the screen. He answers. And at first, it's not so bad. It's a bit easier to tell the story when he doesn't actually have to talk. He was warped away, bound, gagged. Shigaraki was there, said he was going to kill him when he was done with him. Inko soon starts sniffling beside him, and he can't stop the way his fingers tremble when he begins describing his first encounter with All for One and how he stole his energy. Detective Tsukaki is confused about the latter part and presses for details, and Izuku tries his best to explain, but the memories flash before his eyes and his chest begins to feel tight. He types and deletes sentences over and over again before dropping his phone on the bed and burying his face between his knees, struggling to take deep, shuddering breaths. There's a hand on his shoulder and he knows, it's Aizawa's. He leans into the grounding pressure as he slowly regains control of his breathing. When he lifts his head, the adults are gazing at him in concern. He flushes. "I'm sorry," Detective Tsukaki apologizes, "I didn't mean to press. We can do this another time if you're not." Izuku waves his hand and shakes his head. Picking up his phone again, he types out his response, something a bit more vague but easier for him to get out. Aizawa is beside him now, so he reads, "He had a quirk that could force quirks. But I couldn't heal him all at once, so I had time." It's probably for the best that Aizawa is the one to read instead of Recovery Girl from then on. Izuku's mentor begins to look increasingly distressed, along with the other adults, as he describes how the League tried to manipulate him to their side and how he tried to manipulate them right back by pretending to be swayed. When he gets to the part about how he forced his quirk past its own natural limits in order to have some control over All for One's healing process, Recovery Girl, understandably, reacts with shock. She tells him he can never do something like that again, that it was incredibly dangerous and stupid to do. His quirk prevents him from healing while he's injured for a reason. He can't just ignore his body's self-preservation safeguards whenever he wants. And he knows that. It felt horrible to force his quirk like that. His whole body was telling him not to. And it drained him even faster than normal. He tells her this, and it seems to both appease her and make her more worried. Well, quirks have been known to occasionally react strangely in traumatic experiences, she sighs. You might not even be able to force your quirk like this again, and I don't want you to try it. Izuku thinks about how he accidentally healed Todoroki's scar, but decides not to mention it. If what she said is true, then he can just blame that on the added emotions of that moment. There isn't much else to say after that. He talks about the press conference, about the fight, about his friends rescuing him. He tries to emphasize the lack of combat, but it kind of gets lost in the irritated tone that Aizawa reads it in, and how they brought him to the police station. Then Detective Tsukaki asks about Ragdoll. Izuku blinks. What about Ragdoll? He types. Aizawa glances at him, then at Tsukaki. The detective looks uneasy. She was kidnapped as well. Izuku's breath hitches, his eyes widening in shock. She was rescued, of course. During Kamino. But her quirk. He hesitates. It seems to have been taken from her. By All for One, we believe. I was just wondering, during your time with him, did he ever say anything? He trails off. Izuku slowly shakes his head, stunned. No. He rasps, aloud, no, I didn't even know she was there. Recovery Girl reaches over and takes his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Izuku can hardly believe his ears. Ragdoll was there the whole time? And All for One. That monster stole her quirk? It's too much for his worn-out brain to handle right now, but he swallows heavily and takes slight solace in the memory of All Might's fist driving into All for One's face. Principal Nezu straightens up then, bringing the attention to him. His mammalian face isn't quite built for human emotions, but his black eyes glitter with sorrow. Well, he starts softly, Midoriya Izuku, the last time we spoke, I issued an apology to you. I hope you can forgive me for being repetitive. What I said during the press conference was not all for show. This has been his greatest failure, and you have endured so much more suffering than you deserve. He hops off his chair and bows low. On behalf of the heroes that serve as its staff, I sincerely apologize for all the pain that both you and your mother have endured. Izuku stares at him. Beside him, Aizawa and Recovery Girl follow suit, bowing their heads politely. Inko glances between them, pressing her lips together. The freckled boy shifts uncomfortably before typing something on his phone. He tugs at Aizawa's sleeve and the man glances over, reads, then sighs. He keeps tugging until Aizawa finally caves a few seconds later with a huff. He says, I don't blame you for this happening. Like Aizawa-sensei said during the conference, I'm the first healer in training has ever had, so, experience is not on your side. Nobody could have foreseen any of this happening. If there was even the slightest warning that I could be in danger, I know you would have taken every precaution to keep me safe." He gives Nezu what he hopes is a reassuring smile, and the principal's whiskers twitch. "So much trust," Nezu murmurs, "I promise we will prove to you that we deserve it." Inko shifts in her seat. Speaking of keeping him safe, she glances at Detective Tsukaki nervously. What's going to happen now? I mean, I'm still a little confused with this all for one being after my baby, but if he's gone now? Detective Tsukaki looks at her and explains, "Yes, All for One is already incarcerated in Tartarus as we speak. The bad news is that the rest of the league got away. And while we don't believe they'll go after Midoriya-kun after such a big loss, we're not going to be taking any chances, so we'll be keeping up with the security details we organized after the mall incident, as well as increasing security overall around your house." Inko nods, processing. Izuku finds himself leaning against Aizawa a little for support. God, the mall incident. It feels like it happened ages ago, but it hasn't even been 3 weeks. Principal Nezu mentions that is also thinking about adding a dorm system, the details of which still need to be worked out, in hopes of keeping all the students more safe. Izuku can tell that his mother is a bit apprehensive about it, but Nezu reassures her that the teachers will come by the students' houses to discuss the matter at length later. Once everything is wrapped up, the principal and Detective Tsukaki bid him goodbye and take their leave. Aizawa stays, which kind of confuses him, but he doesn't question it, and Recovery Girl decides to use her quirk on Izuku to finish healing his injuries. She didn't want to use it earlier because she didn't know the circumstances of his unconsciousness and didn't want to risk making it worse in case it was because of quirk exhaustion, which it was, mostly. Now seems as good a time as any, though, and when she heals him, he quickly grows tired and falls back asleep for the rest of the night. The next day is slow and quiet, but it starts with a jolt. Izuku startles awake from a nightmare that he doesn't remember, panting and sweating profusely. Inko, thankfully, is asleep in the chair next to him, so she doesn't notice his panic and he has enough time to collect himself before she wakes up. A doctor comes to give him a once-over, but Recovery Girl's quirk proved its value yet again. The sharp pain in his throat has been softened to its usual dull ache, but he's told to try and give his voice a rest for a while. He's discharged with a few more scars to add to his growing collection. As per the previously agreed upon security measures, he needs a hero to escort him home, and he's entirely unsurprised to see Aizawa leaning against the wall when they step out of his room. Warmth blooms in his chest. He's really grateful that the man has remained by his side for so long during his hospital stay. Aizawa's gaze briefly lingers on the new faint scar under his left eye before he nods at Inko and begins leading the way down the hall. When they step off of the elevator, Kaken is waiting in the lobby. He looks up, eyes locking on Izuku, and immediately jumps to his feet. Izuku blinks. It reminds him of the night he was rescued, when Kaken just stopped and stared at him, longing to hug him but hesitant because he didn't want to hurt him. Well, Izuku isn't injured anymore, so what are they waiting for? Kaken seems to realize the same thing at the same time, because they both start towards each other and meet halfway. Izuku wraps his arms around his shoulders and buries his face into the crook of his neck. Kaken practically crushes him to his chest, having no qualms about hugging him as tightly as he wants now that he doesn't have to worry about hurting him. He inhales deeply, while Izuku nuzzles closer. "I'm alright," he mumbles against the blonde skin. "I fucking know," Kaken's growl rumbles in chest, "I told you you would be." Izuku smiles and presses his cheek against his neck. Kaken is so warm in his arms, it feels like it's been ages since he's felt his familiar heat. "Have you been waiting here long?" he asks quietly. Kaken makes a negative noise. "Auntie's been keeping me updated. Said you'd be getting discharged this morning, so I took the train over. The old hag wanted to be here too, but she got swamped at work." He huffs, then pauses and lowers his voice. "None of the other dumbasses were told which hospital you were taken to, Otherwise I'm sure they'd be here too. He shrugs. So, you know. Izuku tries to hum but the sound gets lost in his mangled throat, so he just nods instead. He feels a little guilty for it, but he's kind of glad that none of his other classmates showed up. It was a nice surprise after the mall incident, but right now he thinks it would be a little overwhelming. He's far from over everything that happened, and there's a lingering tiredness that still hasn't left his bones quite yet. Honestly, he kind of just wants to go home and cuddle with Kaken for the rest of the day, and he gets the feeling that's what Kaken wants to do too. The ride home is quiet. He and Kaken sit in companionable silence, each gazing out their own window as the city passes by. It feels a bit surreal to be going home after all this time. How long has it been? 6 days. No, a week. He walks towards his house in a daze, but before he reaches his porch, a hand on his head stops him. Glancing over his shoulder, he sees Aizawa retract his hand and reach into his pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. When Izuku tilts his head questioningly, the man says, "It's from Koda. He wanted me to give it to you." Izuku stares at the piece of paper. Koda. Why would he? Run. Get out of here. I'll leave him alone. He saved a boy from being murdered by not one, but 2 villains. Izuku's breath quickens at the voices in his mind and he struggles to swallow past the tightness in his throat. Forcing away the memories, he takes the letter from Aizawa with a small nod, but doesn't open it. He'll read it later when he can handle it. Aizawa's gaze roams over him one last time before he finally bids them goodbye and leaves them to return to their house. Izuku nearly bursts into tears when Sushi cannonballs into his chest as soon as he steps past the door. The large feline purrs and nuzzles him furiously, not even bothering to pause and give Kaken his customary stink eye. Izuku buries his face into his fur and carries him into the living room, then stops. What does he do with himself now? Does he just go back to normal? That seems wrong, somehow. But it shouldn't, right? Wouldn't the strong thing to do would be to keep moving on? Not like nothing happened, but... He sighs, scratching behind Sushi's ears in thought. What would he have even normally done before all this? It's not like he had much free time for hobbies, and obviously he's not going to be going on runs or sparring anytime soon. But if he checked his phone or turned on the TV, all he would see is the media talking about All Might's fight against All for One, or him and his rescue. Thankfully, Kaken makes the decision for him, and for once Izuku is glad to let him. The blonde shoos a disgruntled Sushi out of his arms before dragging him over to the couch. He pushes him down by the shoulder, plops down next to him, and then pulls him closer to his side. Izuku quickly gets the message and turns towards him, wrapping his arms around his torso and tucking his head under his chin. Not one to be left out, Sushi jumps up onto the couch beside him and curls up at his back. Inko says nothing of the scene, but smiles softly as she disappears off into her own bedroom to give them some privacy. Neither Izuku nor Kaken speak as they lay together on the couch. Izuku sighs, sinking into the warmth of his best friend's body. Everything about it is so familiar to him. The strong, steady heartbeat pounding against his chest. The hard muscle beneath his fingertips. When he inhales through his unbroken nose, he can smell Kaken's burned sugar scent. Arms slide up his back, squeezing a fraction tighter, bringing him impossibly closer. Kaken holds him in a firm embrace, powerful arms shielding him from the world in a silent promise of protection. And Izuku knows that, at least for now, he doesn't have to worry about anything. He doesn't have to worry about going back to normal. He doesn't have to worry about villains that might catch him in reality or in his sleep. He can just appreciate the fact that he survived, that he's okay, and that he's here now, with Kaken. Sighing, he presses his lips against the blonde skin and closes his eyes. Kaken's hand twitches, and he buries his nose in the crook of Izuku's shoulder, letting out a shuddering exhale, as if chasing away an unwanted thought. Izuku nuzzles him. Maybe Kaken needs this just as much as he does? Izuku is in his arms again. He's warm and soft, and breathes gently against his chest as he holds him. Katsuki should be happy. This is what he wanted, isn't it? But fear still lingers at the edge of his mind, the knowledge that Izuku could once again be ripped from his grasp, refusing to allow him to relax completely. He lets out a shaky breath and tilts his head back against the couch, looking up at the ceiling as a hint of dismay creeps in on him. What the fuck is he supposed to do now? How the hell is he supposed to move on? He got Izuku back, he saved him, but how could he call himself his protector after everything that's happened? Just look at him, he's covered in scars now, and every one of them is his fault. Icy Hot's voice very suddenly and rudely interrupts his thoughts. Stop making yourself the villain here, because feeling guilty won't get you anywhere, and Midoriya needs all of us, especially you, to be strong for him right now. Katsuki scowls. Fucker. Get out of his brain. He gives his head a shake. The movement catches Izuku's attention, who shifts in his embrace. His nose brushes against the column of his throat as he quietly mumbles, "What are you thinking?" His voice is soft and weak, barely above a whisper. Katsuki's brow twitches. Aren't you supposed to not be talking? Andy had mentioned something about that when she texted him. The disgruntled puff of air Izuku lets out is enough of an answer. Katsuki rests his chin on top of his head and rubs it against his curls, brows knitted in contemplation. Icy Hot, as much as he hates to mentally admit it, is right. He's played this self-doubting game with himself over and over again, and he always comes to the same conclusion: just work hard until he is strong enough, until he can make sure without a doubt that Izuku will never have to worry about getting another scar. But then there's that fear, that stubborn fear that refuses to go away, that makes him wonder if he'll ever be strong enough. Discomfort churns in his gut. He can tell Izuku is still waiting patiently for a response, even though his eyes are closed as his head rests against his chest. His gaze lands on the new scar on his cheek, and trails down to his marred throat. He swallows. He has to be. In the end, there's no other conclusion to come to. Finally, after a long pause, the blonde lets out a sigh. Voice low, he says, "I know I've already promised this before. And it probably doesn't mean shit to you at this point, after everything that's happened, but I'm gonna be strong enough for you." Izuku goes still. He's not moving in the first place, but Katsuki can feel the way his muscles tense up ever so slightly, not readying for a fight, just not relaxed anymore. It was clearly the wrong thing to say, which confuses Katsuki because he just wanted to provide some sort of comfort or reassurance to him. Izuku is silent for a few moments, then says, "Not for me." And that just confuses Katsuki even more. But Izuku continues, "It's good that you wanna get strong, but you should do it for the right reasons." Katsuki frowns. The right reasons? Izuku wiggles in his arms until he can push himself up and face him. Green eyes meet red. "Why do you want to be a hero?" he rasps. Katsuki is puzzled by the question, but opens his mouth to reply anyway. Because he wants to win dances on his tongue. Because he wants to be like All Might. When he was a kid, the answer would have come easy. But it doesn't seem that simple anymore. He closes his mouth. Izuku already knows this. Why is he asking? Something tugs at his chest when he thinks of his usual answer, something that rubs him the wrong way. He still wants to win. He still wants to be like All Might. And he still envisions a future where he's the best pro-hero in the world and Izuku's the best healer in the world, and they're by each other's sides forever. But there's something a bit deeper than that. This fear that's inside of him, the one that Izuku causes, no, not the one that Izuku causes. The one he makes him realize. The fear that he's not strong enough. He hates it. He hates it with every inch of his being. He wants to be a hero like All Might because he wants to be strong enough. To do everything to win, to save, to protect. Unquestionably, without a doubt in anyone's mind, including his own, that he's going to succeed. He wants to be strong so that Izuku never has to be afraid anymore. He wants to be strong so that he's not afraid anymore. So where does that leave him? Izuku is still waiting for an answer. I want to be a hero because I want to win doesn't sound quite right anymore. There are a lot of things he wants, and winning is one of them, but there was something he felt back in Kamino. Even though he wanted to fight, even though he didn't fight, he still felt strong, invincible. Because they got Izuku, they outsmarted the villains, snatched him right out from under their noses, and they didn't even step onto the battlefield. They won, they saved him, and Katsuki can't tell the difference between the two or which comes first, but all he knows is nothing felt better than having him back in his arms that night. And it wasn't just him, he could see it in the shine in Icy Hot's eyes, in shitty hair and glasses ugly sobbing as they hugged Izuku. This was their success, their triumph. Winning fights felt good, but saving someone, it was a different kind of victory, and it was the best feeling in the world. And he thinks he wouldn't mind doing that for the rest of his life. Chasing the feeling again and again, being a savior, a protector. Maybe for more than just Izuku. He'd be the one to win and bring people home. When the words leave his mouth, they sound right. I want to save people. The soft smile that grows on Izuku's face tells him that he made the right decision. You saved me, he whispers. Katsuki swallows. Once again, his gaze finds the new scar under his left eye before dipping down to his marred throat. He knows that beneath Izuku's shirt and pants he'll find even more scars. But he's here. He's here in Katsuki's arms, and for a few terrifying, awful days, he didn't know if he would ever be able to feel this again. So for right now, this is enough. For right now, he can forget about the lingering fear and just be happy. Yeah, he whispers, pulling Izuku back down to his chest and tucking him under his chin. He allows himself the smallest of smiles as he presses his lips against his curls. I guess I did. Eventually, Izuku manages to separate himself from Kaken long enough to scurry off into the bathroom and take a shower. The doctors had done their best to wipe all the blood, sweat, and ash off of him in the hospital, but it's the first proper shower he's been able to take since he was kidnapped. His hair is a mess, he spends a good amount of time struggling to wash and untangle the knots, scrubbing his dirty scalp, trying to separate his long curls without breaking too many strands. He lathers his skin and the water turns a gross dark color as it swirls down the drain. His fingers tentatively roam over new scars that he'll become more familiar with as time passes. When he steps out of the shower, he feels significantly lighter, almost like he washed away the remnants of Kamino, at least from his body. He catches his reflection in the mirror and stares at the scar under his eye for a few moments. Todoroki's voice echoes in his head. It takes a while, and it's not easy at first, but soon it just becomes part of your body, I guess. And the memories become memories. You'll never forget about it, and you won't get better quickly. But one day, you'll be able to look at your scar and be okay. Funny how as soon as he healed Todoroki's scar, he got one of his own. The hazy memory of heterochromatic eyes and warm lips pressed against his has Izuku's face heating up. He shakes his head and looks down. His phone sits on the counter of the sink and, after a moment of deliberation, he picks it up. Staying away from his social media apps, he starts scrolling past his unread messages. A lot of them are from his friends, but some are from people he hasn't talked to in ages, like Tsubasa and Inaba. The messages vary from reacting in disbelief to the initial news, then when he obviously didn't reply, they turn into well wishes, which greatly increase in number after he's rescued. Izuku's chest aches when he sees a particularly thoughtful message from Haru. He'll have to be sure to catch up with his old friend when he gets the chance. No doubt the poor boy was going out of his mind with worry. The rest of the messages are from his classmates, mostly just promises to visit him soon and wishing him a quick recovery. There's a single message from All Might. Toshinori 12:36 p.m. I know you just got out of the hospital today, but can we meet up somewhere? It might be difficult with how closely you're being watched, but I need to see you, my boy. There's so much I need to say, and we shouldn't talk about it over the phone. Izuku's heart leaps to his throat. The thought of seeing All Might again, after all this time, after everything that's happened. But how will they meet up, though? Izuku can't leave his house alone. Neither Inko nor Kaken nor the police would let him. Obviously, this is going to need to be a private conversation too, so it's not like he can bring anyone with him to wherever he's going to meet All Might. What if he came over instead? No, that would be suspicious to Inko, especially if he's still healing from his wounds from his fight against All for One. Even if he came as Toshinori, it would still be weird if he showed up out of the blue, injured and wanting to talk to Izuku privately. Inko probably wouldn't let him, no matter how much she, apparently, likes him. So how to meet up with him? They'll have to be sneaky about it. Izuku opens up their chat. Midoriya at 2:02 p.m. How injured are you? Despite having been the one to text him, All Might seems surprised that he actually responded, albeit over 2 hours later. Toshinori 2:02 p.m. Young Midoriya. How are you? Are you alright? Midoriya at 2:02 p.m. Are you? How injured are you? The typing bubble appears, then disappears as All Might deletes whatever he writes. Toshinori 2:03 p.m. A little but not a lot. Izuku snorts. Toshinori 2:03 p.m. How injured are you? Midoriya 2:03 p.m. A little but not a lot. Toshinori 2:03 p.m. Very funny. Izuku can practically hear the man's dry tone as he reads the message. It makes his lip twitch upwards. Toshinori 2:03 p.m. Can I call you? Midoriya 2:04 p.m. No, I'm hiding in my bathroom. Toshinori 2:04 p.m. Oh. Toshinori 2:04 p.m. Any particular reason? Midoriya at 2:04 p.m. Kaken will probably try and take my phone away cause he's an overprotective butt and he doesn't want me looking at the news. But we've gotta make a plan if we wanna meet up. Toshinori 2:05 p.m. Any ideas? Midoriya 2:05 p.m. I think I've got one, but we need to be super sneaky. Stealth mode. Toshinori 2:05 p.m. I shall become one with the night. Izuku giggles to himself. Midoriya 2:05 p.m. Tokoyami-kun is rubbing off on you. Midoriya 2:05 p.m. Can you hold your muscle form? Toshinori 2:06 p.m. Yes. Midoriya 2:06 p.m. Then come to my backyard tonight quietly. Whatever hero that's watching me will see that it's you and won't sound the alarm. Toshinori 2:06 p.m. Won't they still think that it's weird that I'm there? Izuku blinks and pauses. Midoriya 2:06 p.m. You know what, they can mind their own business. Toshinori 2:07 p.m. Okay. A sudden knocking on the door of the bathroom startles Izuku so badly he nearly drops his phone. Oi, Izuku. Kaken calls, you fucking alright in there? You're taking ages. Shoving his phone in his pocket, Izuku grabs his clothes and darts out the door, giving Kaken an innocent smile. The blonde merely arches a brow before turning away with a huff. Come on, Auntie and I made katsudon for lunch and it tastes fucking amazing, so you better eat it, all. Okay. It's hard to contain his excitement for the rest of the day. He hasn't seen All Might in over a week. That brief moment in Kamino didn't count and he misses the man dearly. Kaken seems to be a little suspicious now that he's visibly perked up, but he makes no comment. They spend the rest of the day relaxing and watching TV, not the news, and Izuku tries not to appear too eager when the time comes for his friend to leave. There's just one problem. Kaken insists on staying overnight. One look at the blonde's face and Izuku can tell that he's not budging on this. And okay, he knows that Kaken needs to recover, in his own way, as much as he does from Kamino. But damn does it throw a wrench in his plans. So that finds Izuku lying in his bed waiting for Kaken, who is lying on a futon on the floor, to fall asleep. Sushi is curled up against his chest and Izuku uses his cat's fluffy body to hide the bright light of his phone as he texts All Might to inform him of the situation. Thankfully, Kaken has always been terrible at staying up late, and it doesn't take long before his breathing evens out and turns into loud snores. Izuku lets out a quiet sigh of relief. Midoriya 9:47 p.m. He's down. Toshinori 9:47 p.m. I'm on my way. Izuku turns off his phone, shrouding himself in darkness. Now comes the slightly trickier part. Even injured, All Might should be here pretty quickly. All Izuku has to do is get to the backyard without waking anyone, although really most importantly Kaken up. Pulling back his covers, the freckled boy slowly slides off his bed. As soon as his feet touch the ground, a loud meow has him nearly leaping out of his skin. Shit. Sushi. The cat's pale yellow eyes glow in the dark when he glances over his shoulder. His grand black fur blends in with the shadows, so he kind of just looks like a blob of darkness lying on his bed. Sushi doesn't meow again, but he blinks and tilts his head ever so slightly as if to ask, "What are you doing?" Izuku presses a finger to his lips and mouths the word "stay." Sushi stares blankly. Okay, whatever, at least he's not meowing. Izuku turns back around and focuses on not stepping on Kaken's futon, which is pressed right up against his bed. It would be really nice to have Sushi's night vision right now, he thinks to himself. He carefully starts edging around Kaken's futon as quietly as he can, cringing when the floor suddenly creaks under his foot. Kaken snorts, mumbles something that sounds like "die" under his breath, and rolls onto his side. Izuku's lip twitches and he tiptoes the rest of the way over to the door. It's easy to make his way through the rest of the house after that, and soon he's peeking out his sliding back door. There's no movement outside. All Might is fast, he should have been here by now. Izuku hopes he's not too injured. Speaking of, they're probably going to end up hugging if Izuku has anything to say about it, and he doesn't want his quirk automatically activating, so he makes sure to bite the inside of his lip, just a little bit. And lo and behold, not 2 seconds later, the large, shadowy figure of All Might silently drops down into his backyard in a surprisingly stealthy manner. Joy bubbles up inside him like a sparkling apple cider, and he grins, sliding open the door and dashing across the yard towards All Might. The number one hero meets him halfway and scoops him up in his arms, startling a squeak out of him as he's lifted into the air. He giggles and clings to All Might as he spins him around once before lowering to his knees, the man's face buried in the crook of his neck as his large hand cradles the back of his head. His soul buzzes with bright giddiness, and he's so high on the relief and happiness that All Might is here that he doesn't realize that he's actually saying something right now. "My boy," All Might gasps, tight and hoarse. "My boy." Izuku freezes, all elated feelings dying faster than a fire getting doused in a bucket of water. "Oh my boy, I thought I'd lost you." All Might's voice quivers, his muscled arms tightening ever so slightly, pressing him closer to his chest. Izuku feels his breath shudder against his neck as he says, "I am so sorry, I am so sorry, I promised he would never lay a hand on you." And he shh, no, All Might. Izuku hastily shushes him, startling out of his shock when All Might quickly starts to get louder and louder. His heart aches seeing the man so distressed. "Please, no, it's not your fault," he tries to reassure, all for one. He's interrupted when All Might suddenly erupts into a fit of loud, wet coughs that make Izuku hiss both at the volume and at how painful they sound. All Might turns his chin into his fist, but when the coughs finally subside, Izuku doesn't miss the dark blood staining his skin. "All Might," he starts. The man wipes away the blood as if nothing happened, swallowing thickly. "Tsukaki-kun told me what happened," he rasps. "What you told him what he did?" And his voice breaks and he inhales sharply, chest shuddering. All Might. Izuku feels something in his own chest crack. Then All Might's hand is cupping the back of Izuku's head, bringing it forward to press their foreheads together. "My boy, I am so sorry," he says, eyes brimming with tears, voice heavy with guilt. "You have gone through so much more suffering than you deserve." His breath hitches and he squeezes his eyes shut briefly before saying, "He has." destroyed so many things precious to me, and when I heard he had taken you." Izuku's eyes widen, then start to burn furiously. He immediately buries his face in All Might's chest, suddenly finding it difficult to breathe past the hard lump that has firmly lodged in his throat. Precious. He's precious to All Might. The #1 hero. The idea is outrageous enough to make Izuku want to both laugh and blush uncontrollably. But then All Might is holding him like he is so precious, strong arms that have held up buildings, squeezing him just tightly enough to make him feel cocooned but not hard enough to hurt, large hands that have defeated hundreds of villains cradling him gently against his chest, thick legs that have carried him faster than bullet trains tucked beneath him to serve as a cushion. And Izuku thinks of long text conversations, of a corny sense of humor, of hollow cheeks filling out, of a hand ruffling his hair, of after-school meetings, of never-ending gentle encouragement. He thinks of being kidnapped in the League of Villains, and how the thought of All Might was one of the things that kept him going, kept him strong. And Izuku realizes that All Might is precious to him too. A shy smile tugs at his lips and he nuzzles into the man's chest, warmth spreading to the tips of his fingers. He takes a quivering breath and tries to force back his tears, but a few manage to escape and get All Might's shirt wet, much to his embarrassment. His face burns, but then he hears a loud sniffle come from behind his head. At least he's not the only one overcome with emotion right now. Taking that as permission, Izuku burrows his face into All Might's shirt and bursts into tears. For a good few minutes, they simply cling to one another, breathing each other in and reaffirming to themselves that everything is alright now, they won, they're okay. Then All Might starts coughing again, and Izuku thinks he might have to reconsider that last part. He pulls away and frowns in concern. Now that he's getting a better look at him, he can see that All Might is pretty heavily bandaged. His arms and legs are wrapped in various places, and Izuku can see bandages peeking out from under the collar of his shirt, no doubt for his old wound on his torso that all for one aggravated. There don't seem to be any breaks. Recovery Girl probably took care of those already, but Izuku really doesn't like the sound of that coughing. He grimaces, watching as All Might, turned away from him and coughing into his fist, finally catches his breath. After a pause, he asks quietly, "Are you okay?" "Oh, don't you dare start fussing," All Might scoffs, startling him. The blonde fixes him with a stern look. "Don't think I haven't forgotten about that stunt you tried to pull back at the bar." Izuku blinks. "Chio-san told me all about that new trick you discovered with your quirk when she came back to check on me." "Oh." Izuku shrinks when All Might's expression turns a mix between disappointed and exasperated. "Forcing your energy? Really?" Izuku wrings his hands, averting his gaze. "You needed as much strength as you could get," he tries to explain. "All for One was coming. He didn't know you weren't fully healed. It was incredibly dangerous, though," All Might says firmly, "and it is not something I want you to do for my sake. You should have known better." Frustration burns Izuku's chest. It's not," he stammers. You don't understand." He cuts himself off, pressing his lips together and inhaling through his nose. All Might's eyes are on him, but he can't meet his gaze, so he keeps his head ducked as he mumbles, "I just couldn't stand the thought that if you two fought, and he killed you, then it would be all my fault. Because I healed him. Because I made him strong again." All Might goes still. "Young Midoriya." He breathes, "No, no." His large hands move to cup Izuku's face, tilting it up so that he's forced to meet All Might's gaze. His piercing blue eyes are firm, and his voice is steadfast as he says, "Don't think like that. All for One's actions were his fault and his fault only. He forced you to heal him. You had no say in the matter. Even if I had lost, it would not have been your fault." Izuku swallows. He must still look unconvinced, because All Might then lowers his voice, like he's telling him a secret, and whispers, "But you know what? I won because of you. Because you, Midoriya Izuku." He smiles, and it's so different from any other smile he's seen on the man, the way it lights his eyes in a warm laughing glow. My clever little healer, outwitted even the villains and found out All for One's weaknesses. Because you, Midoriya Izuku, stumbled across a skeleton of a man a little over a year ago and regrew his stomach and have never stopped giving to him since. Because you, Midoriya Izuku, are a stronger man than I'll ever be. All Might's eyes soften. Do you see? I won because of you. Izuku stares at him. And obviously bursts into tears again because fuck, what else can he do after hearing that? All Might tucks him against his broad chest while he cries, using the man's shirt to muffle his wee sobs. Izuku doesn't even know how to begin to process All Might's words, so he decides to just not. He feels his back being rubbed between his shoulder blades, and All Might chuckles. Izuku's ear is pressed against his chest, and when he chuckles, he can hear the way it sounds raspy and wet with blood. His heart clenches, and he silently renews his vow to heal him as soon as possible. After a few minutes, his tears finally subside and he pulls away, leaning back in All Might's lap. The blonde reaches out and daintily fixes a couple of his curls, making Izuku let out a tired giggle. All Might's eyes crinkle before he sobers up slightly. His hand slides down from Izuku's hair, thumb brushing over the new scar under his eye. This might seem a bit redundant, he says quietly, but how are you doing? Izuku hesitates, considering his response. He wants to say he's fine, but, well, he's not. But he's not exactly doing as awfully as he thought he'd be doing, he supposes. He's been doing a pretty good job of just not constantly thinking of everything that happened, even though All for One and the League loom at the edges of his mind like an oncoming storm. It's strange, he feels kind of numb, almost like he's trying so hard to go back to normal, but it just feels weird to do so. He wonders when normal will feel normal again. I don't really know yet, it comes out sounding more like a question. He winces, but All Might gives him a reassuring smile. That's alright. Izuku smiles back and asks, how about you? Something passes across All Might's face. His eyes darken, and his smile disappears. For a brief, terrible second, he looks incredibly sad. It's over as soon as it started, but even afterwards he still looks very troubled. I don't really know yet, he whispers. Izuku blinks, confused and worried. All Might won, didn't he? Why is he upset? Is there something else he's concerned about? Did something happen? Should he be concerned too? What not helping, he tells himself sternly, forcing his anxiety down. If All Might wants him to know something, he'll come and confide in him in his own time. But for now, Izuku gently touches All Might's hand. That's alright, he reassures. All Might's lips curl and Izuku's heart warms. After a moment, he adds, and Night-Eye. All Might pauses and tilts his head, glancing away with a slight grimace. Night-Eye is throwing a bit of a fit that I'm coming out here instead of resting. Izuku winces. Sorry. All Might shakes his head. Don't be. He was just as worried about you as I was. Did you two work together to find me? Izuku asks, then blinks, a realization hitting him. Wait a minute. Did he use his quirk on you? Did you know you would beat All for One? No. All Might answers immediately, no. He did not use his quirk on me. I didn't even suggest it. I mean, things are getting better between us, of course, but that would have been hard for him. Izuku flushes and nods, feeling a bit stupid for suggesting it in the first place. All Might continues. Apparently, though, he used it on you to see your future. And he saw a future where I was completely healed. Izuku perks up. Sir Night-Eye hadn't told him anything about that. Actually, he hadn't really told him any details about his future, but from his reaction Izuku had assumed it at least was a good one. Really? When? All Might gives him a deliberate look. I will not tell you when because I know you and I know you would rush towards it relentlessly if you knew. Izuku pouts. However, he apparently did not tell you this either. And so, when you were taken by All for One, He was concerned that you would assume that everything would be fine because he had implied that, since you're an anomaly, his previous prediction of my death could not come to fruition, and therefore you would not take the situation as seriously. Izuku's mind skids to a halt. Wait, what? Sir Night-Eye's prediction. Oh right, that was supposed to be this year, or the next, or it could have already passed, because Izuku is an anomaly, apparently. Maybe? Actually, Sir Night-Eye didn't really give him an answer there. He just looked into Izuku's future and then gave him a hug, which, yeah, looking back now, that seems a little vague. Izuku tries to think back to that day, to the specifics of the conversation. It feels like it was ages ago. Sir Night-Eye was telling him about his prediction of All Might's death, but then he didn't foresee Izuku healing him, so he wanted to know if Izuku was some sort of anomaly, and Izuku asked if he had changed anything. Right? Yeah. He asked if he had changed anything in the future Sir Night-Eye saw for All Might, so Sir Night-Eye then looked into his future. And then saw a future where All Might is completely healed. Except he didn't tell Izuku and just hugged him instead, which totally sent the wrong message. So now he's thinking that Izuku is thinking that he thinks that he changed Sir Night-Eye's prediction of All Might's death and that he isn't fated to be killed by a terrible villain this year or the next because he's an anomaly and therefore had nothing to worry about while being captured by the League of Villains All Might. His brain hurts. That was literally the furthest thing from my mind at the time. All Might lets out a bark of laughter that Izuku hastily shushes him for. He puts a hand over his mouth, still grinning. Well, he says, eyes twinkling, Night-Eye really can get wrapped up in his head sometimes. Izuku's shoulders sag as he gives a weary smile. He huffs tiredly and shrugs, I know what that's like. His tone is a bit too knowing, a bit too world-weary for a boy his age, and All Might's hand comes to rest on his head, for a couple of moments. He has to leave soon after that, wishing him a good night's sleep and ordering him to take it easy for the rest of the week before disappearing in a single leap. Izuku sneaks back into his room without a problem, immensely grateful to see Kaken in the same position he left him in, and collapses on his bed. The late hour and his emotional talk with All Might has left him utterly exhausted, so he curls up under his covers with sushi and quickly falls asleep. And at 4 a.m., he wakes up, thrashing and fighting to get away from unseen villains, strangled screams tearing from his throat all the while. Kaken snaps him out of it and holds him tightly while he sniffles and gasps until he cries himself to sleep once more. Apparently, his nightmares don't care how tired he is. Chapter 36. The next day, the Midoriya Izuku rescue squad shows up at his doorstep. Now that he's not about to pass out from blood loss, they're able to have a proper reunion. As soon as he sees him, Kirishima grabs Izuku and all but crushes him in a hug, Ida squawking and chopping the air behind him. He scolds the redhead for being too rough, but Izuku just giggles and reassures him that it's fine. He's alright now. He's more than happy to hug Kirishima back before moving to embrace Ida, then Yaozu, then Todoroki stands a couple of feet away, scarlet and smiling softly. Izuku's heart flutters and his stomach is suddenly violently assaulted by butterflies, so much so that he almost feels like puking. He firmly clamps his jaws shut, heat rising to his cheeks as he stares at Todoroki like a deer caught in headlights. Shit, what does he do? Does he hug him too? He should, right? They're friends. It would be weird if they didn't hug. The others would definitely be suspicious if he hugged everyone except Todoroki. Before he can lose confidence, Izuku forces himself forward and hugs Todoroki. The taller boy's arms wrap around his back and Izuku desperately hopes he can't feel the way his heart is racing 1,000,000 miles per hour in his chest. Crap, why does he have to smell so good? Izuku starts to pull away, but is it just his imagination, or do Todoroki's hands linger ever so slightly? Todoroki's face comes into view, closer than before, and all Izuku can think of is soft lips pressed against his, hot breath on his skin, blood and vanilla on his tongue. How have you guys been? He asks a little too loudly, voice breaking as he yanks himself away from Todoroki. His face isn't burning, his face isn't burning, his face isn't burning. Kirishima's shit-eating grin and the obnoxious snort Kaken lets out at the sight of his face tells him otherwise. So now he has that to worry about. Honestly, compared to all of the other things he's been worried about over the past few days, it's not the worst thing. He hasn't really given much thought to his kiss with Todoroki since it happened. His kiss. His first kiss. With Todoroki, of all people. Just the memory of it makes his heart do somersaults. But now what does this mean for them? Are they still friends? Something more? Does Izuku even want something more? Well, of course he does. The butterflies waging war on his stomach are making that pretty clear. Everything moved so quickly though, and it was such an emotional moment. Maybe he should just see where things go. He's so used to overthinking and overplanning, but that probably wouldn't be a good idea for something like this. For once, maybe he should just go with the flow. He's totally not just pushing this problem away for later. The rescue squad only ends up staying for a couple of hours before they all have to leave for various reasons. Kirishima manages to convince Kaken to come to a small local strip mall with him to relax. The blonde is a bit reluctant to leave Izuku's side, but Izuku eagerly encourages him to go, practically shoving him out the door with Kirishima and telling him to bring back some leggings for him. He never did get to buy some, after the Kashi Ward incident. After that, he gets about an hour of peace before his senpais show up completely unannounced. He's entirely unprepared for their presence, and he doesn't know how in the world they know where he lives, although they did drop him off at his house one time while he was asleep, so surely they must have gotten his address from somebody. His money's on All Might cause, Mirio. Needless to say, he's a bit shocked when he's in the middle of eating lunch and his mother opens the door to see 3 third-years standing proudly, or in Tamaki's case, sulking on the other side. Mirio immediately scoops Izuku up into a hug, which promptly gets him attacked by Sushi not 2 seconds later, which draws an actual, honest-to-God laugh from Tamaki and a burst of giggles from Nejire, which gets them all a dramatic look of betrayal from Mirio on the floor. Inko is confused. They do get their emotional, touchy-feely stuff over with fairly quickly. Neither Mirio nor Nejire are ones to linger on heavy topics for too long and are more focused on cheering him up, but Izuku doesn't miss the meaningful glances Tamaki casts his way, the silent offer of "I'm here if you need to" talk lingering in the air, nor does he miss the way Mirio's eyes linger on his new scar occasionally. He'll have to talk to the older boy privately later, when his other senpais aren't around to hear about One for All and their friends' connection to All for One. But he can worry about that at another time. The next day, he has even more visitors. This time, it's Aizawa and All Might, coming to discuss the situation with the dorms. Izuku frets over a still-injured All Might as he awkwardly leads him into their living room. His worry as a healer and his not-quite-stifled hero worship are swirling in a chaotic mess inside of him. All Might and Eraserhead are in his house. All Might gently chides him and waves him off, reminding him that he still can't use his quirk on pro heroes. Izuku pouts but backs off. Compared to the last time he saw him, All Might has a considerable less amount of bandages, so at least he's on a quick road to recovery. Aizawa seems to have some sort of brief staring contest with Sushi before the cat deems him worthy of existing within the household and allows them to get down to business. Izuku shifts nervously where he sits, watching the adults with anxious eyes. The school had already sent a notice of the all-dorm system plan prior to the teacher's visit, and Inko had reacted with mixed feelings. They had sat down and talked that night, talked about what to do, talked about what comes next, and he learned just how badly her trust in has been broken. He supposes it shouldn't have surprised him, considering all that's happened. But it makes his stomach curl with apprehension as he watches his mother brace herself in front of the teachers now. She starts, then trails off, looking down at her clenched hands. "I'm sorry. I just can't say I really like the idea of Izuku leaving home after everything that's happened." All Might leans forward. I know it seems like such a cruel thing to ask to separate from him, when you've only just gotten him back, he says, but it's because of everything that's happened that he must leave. In the dorms, we can ensure his safety. Inko lets out a harsh, wet laugh that startles the teachers. You couldn't ensure his safety before, even when you did. You promised me, Eraserhead, that you'd keep him safe, and look what happened. She glares at Aizawa, eyes glistening with unshed tears. Izuku stares at her in shock. A hazy memory floats up to his mind. You've already saved his life once before, you know? I don't even know if you remember. I do. Of course I do. I almost lost my baby that day. But you saved him. You brought him back to me. So, I trust you. Ma'am, so you keep him safe, you hear me? You promise me that you'll protect him. I will. I promise. Izuku's heart clenches as frustration bubbles up in his throat. He wants to protest, but the expression on his mother's face makes him hold his tongue. All Might glances at Aizawa. The latter holds Inko's angry gaze, throat bobbing a little as he swallows before he speaks. I know. And I failed. I broke my promise. I couldn't protect your son, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. He pauses, the words sinking in, and Inko sniffles. After a moment, he leans forward, elbows on his knees, and continues, I know that you have no reason to trust me or after we have failed you so many times. But believe me, we are trying to do better. We want what's best for Midoriya-kun as much as you do. We want to provide him with a safe and secure learning environment where his biggest worry will be what's on his next anatomy test. Despite the somber mood, Izuku's lip twitches. Bold of Aizawa to assume that he doesn't know everything about the human body at this point. We want to protect him, Aizawa says earnestly. We will fight tooth and nail to do so, but only if you allow us to. Inko takes in a shuddering breath, eyes filling up with tears, before she tears her gaze away from his, dropping her head. I know, she croaks, casting a glance at All Might's bandages. I know you would. And you said such nice things about him during the pre-press conference. So I know you watch over him well. She exhales sharply, wiping away a couple of tears. Her shoulders tremble a few long moments and she sniffles again. It's like, she hiccups, it's like my worst nightmare came true that day. The teachers gaze at her with pained expressions. I've always been so scared that somebody would take him and then someone did and I can't protect him. I'm his mother and I can't do anything about it, but she lets out a trembly sigh. At least you have a chance. Izuku's breath catches in his throat. His mind is a whirlwind of emotions, but right now hope sparks in his chest. So, Inko's shoulders sag. Even though it makes me nervous to send you to live now, I think it'd make me even more nervous knowing you'd be walking to and from school every day. I already didn't like it before, but now after everything that's happened. She sighs again, looking far too defeated and tired. Izuku's heart aches and he grasps his mother's hand, giving it a comforting squeeze. She smiles half-heartedly and squeezes back. I can keep you safer than I can. Mom, Izuku exclaims softly. Where is this all coming from? Then, Inko turns to face the heroes, straightening up and fixing them with a firm gaze. I don't like this, she says, voice quivering slightly. I still don't trust Ta completely, but you're the only hope my Izuku has. So please, keep him safe. All Might and Aizawa glance at each other briefly before they both stand up and bow. We will, Aizawa says. We promise. He looks up and meets Inko's gaze. And I mean it. No more mistakes. There's a heavy weight to his words. The trust that Inko is giving him is fragile, thread-thin. And it goes unspoken that if the trust is shattered one more time, it is not going to be pieced back together as easily. Inko doesn't respond, but she merely holds Aizawa's gaze and nods. And so the rest of the week is mainly focused on preparing to move him into the dorms. Inko helps him pack up his stuff into boxes, and it's strange taking his old All Might posters down from his walls makes him think that maybe it would be weird to put them up in his new room. He even has a couple of Recovery Girl, plus some blurry photos of Eraserhead that he found on the internet and printed out after the man saved him when he was 10. They've been on his walls for so long that he's gotten used to them, but to deliberately put them up in his new dorm would be weird, right? They're his teachers, after all. Just the thought of any of them walking into his room and seeing the posters makes his face burn with embarrassment. He ends up shoving the posters at the bottom of one of the boxes just so that his mother won't bother him about it. There's some debate over whether or not Sushi will go with him. Inko insists that he'll miss him too much, that he's always been Izuku's cat more than hers. But Izuku doesn't want to leave her all by herself, especially not after what she just said. He points out that the dorms might not even allow pets, but apparently she already called ahead to check and make sure that they do. He's torn. It would be nice to have Sushi with him, something familiar to help him adjust to such a new and difficult situation. But he'd feel terrible to leave his mother in this house all alone, and Sushi's not always friendly with new people anyways, he might get in trouble. I could always get another cat, Inko suggests. Izuku blinks. What? Inko shrugs, nonchalantly stirring the food she's cooking. A kitten, maybe, she says. With my baby going off to live at school, I'm going to need something else to fuss over. The soft look in her eyes brings a smile to Izuku's face. Oh, Mom. It does make him feel a little bit better. Just so long as she's not alone. And this will be her chance to have a nice bond with a feline friend. Not that she doesn't get along with Sushi, but like she said, he's always been more Izuku's cat than. Wait a minute. He pauses. Hold on, you're gonna get a kitten and I'm not gonna get to see it? Aside from getting ready to move, there isn't much else for him to do for the rest of the week. He musters up the emotional energy to reconnect with his friends through their class group chat and tentatively starts watching the news, only to stop when he finds out how gravely injured Best Genius was during All for One's initial attack. He resumes his at-home speech therapy exercises and does his best to muffle his strangled cries at night when he wakes up from a nightmare. Kakun can't be there all the time to comfort him and he doesn't want him to either. On a particularly bad night, he finds solace in cracking open one of the many medical books in his collection and he ends up reading with Sushi curled up in his lap until the break of dawn. Unfortunately, this was the night before move-in day. So when Present Mick, of all people, shows up at his door bright and early to drive him to it takes Izuku's brain a couple of moments to process the sight before him. He blinks slowly. "You're going to drive me?" he rasps. Present Mick flashes him a blinding grin. "That's right." His loud voice pierces Izuku's eardrums. "Don't want you walking around with all that heavy luggage now, do we?" "No way." He waves his arms dramatically and nearly knocks a plant off of Izuku's windowsill. Izuku blinks again. Well, that's clearly a cover-up. Present Mick is obviously here to be his bodyguard. Izuku knows that he's not meant to travel without a hero escort. Does Present Mick think that he doesn't know that? At his silence, Present Mick straightens up and gestures to himself. "Oh, you mean I'm going to drive you? Right, no wonder you're confused. Shotokan was practically hanging off your shoulder after you got rescued. I'm still shocked he actually let you leave the hospital." Present Mick laughs while Izuku's confusion only increases. The voice hero's grin widens and he leans closer conspiringly. "He wanted to come get you himself, but I managed to convince him to stay behind and wait for the other listeners to arrive," he whispers, loudly behind his hand. He'll never admit this out loud, but you're his favorite, kiddo. He winks and ruffles Izuku's hair. He tries to his cheeks. Absolutely having no idea how to respond to that, he kind of just awkwardly laughs and scratches the back of his head and mutters some excuse before shuffling back into his house to go grab his bags. The majority of his stuff has already been shipped ahead to the school in boxes, but he still has to carry some minor things, as well as Sushi's cat crate. When he returns, Present Mick perks up at the sight of sushi. "Ooh, a little kitty. All you, Shotokun's gonna love you." He coos and makes the mistake of sticking his fingers in between the bars of the crate, wiggling them around. There's a hiss, then he yanks his hand away quickly. Wide-eyed. "Oh yeah," he suddenly sounds disgruntled, "Shotokun's gonna love you." Izuku winces. "Sorry about that." Thankfully, the hero doesn't seem too terribly offended and waves him off in favor of going to grab his bags, fending him off with a boop on the nose when he protests. Izuku watches him carry his stuff down to the car, hesitating to follow. His stomach churns uneasily. Living in the dorms. As soon as Principal Netsu had mentioned it in the hospital, Izuku had kind of just seen it as another one of the security measures that was put in place for him. Even though it was technically optional, he knew there wasn't really much else of a choice. Inko knew that too. And it's not that he's not looking forward to it. He is. All of his friends will be there, he knows that thanks to the group chat. So at least Class 1A will stick together. At least their normal won't change too much. Except it will, won't it? He knows this is just his attempt at trying to make them more comfortable, but Izuku's been through so much instability within the past few weeks, he's not entirely sure how well he's going to be able to adapt to such a big change in his lifestyle. He just desperately wishes things could be normal again. A gentle touch on his shoulder startles him out of his thoughts. He turns to see Inko giving him a soft smile and welcomes the embrace she pulls him into. Closing his eyes, he breathes in his mother's comforting scent, wondering how long it'll be before he'll be able to smell it again. His heartstrings tug when he pulls away to see Inko's eyes, glistening, but she squeezes his shoulder and tells him to have fun with his friends and stay safe. Stay safe. Of course. This is all to stay safe. The back of his tongue tastes bitter. Just thinking about Shigaraki always brings a nervous quiver to his gut, but just this once the memory is tinged with anger. Inko's touch lingers on his skin as he turns and walks over to the car, present Mick, ushering him inside. The ride to is a short one. Izuku holds Sushi's crate in his lap the entire time, trying to ignore the bundle of nerves that has molded a home in the cavity of his chest and idly wondering why couldn't they have given Kaken a ride too since he lives so close by. Before he knows it, he's walking up to his new home. Midoriya-kun. A smile forms on his face without him having to even think of it. Ashido and Kaminari are the first ones to rush over and glomp him, nearly making him drop Sushi, who meows loudly in protest at being jostled. "Shit, sorry," Kaminari says, but doesn't let go, squeezing Izuku tightly. "Dude, it's so good to see you, man. We missed you." Ashido's voice is muffled from where her face is buried in his shirt. "I miss you." Izuku starts to rasp. "Midoriya-kun." Araka calls out, and then the rest of his classmates, the ones that he hasn't seen since the training camp, are coming over and giving him warm smiles and hugs. He pretends not to notice the way their eyes linger on his new scar, as well as the slightly damp spot Ashido left on his shirt, as well as the hug Shinsei gives him that is unusually long for someone as aloof and unused to physical affection as he is. He pretends not to notice all of these things in favor of widening his smile and returning their hugs, relishing in the familiar feeling of embracing his classmates, his friends. This is normal. This he can do easily. Nothing is hard when he has his friends around. He can do this. Smiling to himself, he goes to pick up Sushi, whose crate he had to put down in order to hug everyone. As he straightens up, a shadow descends over him. "You brought your cat?" Izuku looks up and nearly chokes on his own spit when he sees Todoroki 2 feet away from him. The taller boy's gaze slides from him to Sushi's crate in his arms, expression pleasantly neutral. "What's his name again?" he asks. Gulping, Izuku forces himself not to stare at where Todoroki's scar once was. Sushi. Right," Todoroki hums. "I think Koda-kun brought his rabbit." All Izuku manages to get out in response is an awkward, "Oh. This is kind of weird." Is Todoroki trying to make small talk? That would be certainly out of character for him. Oh god, Izuku did make things weird between them with that kiss, didn't he? Unless this isn't small talk? Maybe they're just out of practice with each other or something? Maybe he's trying to warn Izuku about his cat eating Koda's rabbit? Hopefully that won't be a problem. Maybe Izuku is just overanalyzing as usual? Before their maybe small talk can go any further, Aizawa appears in front of the dorm building and gets everyone's attention. I'll explain everything in regards to the dorms in a few moments, but first. He pauses, his gaze roaming over the class. Your focus now will be on getting the provisional licenses you were unable to get during the training camp. However, it seems that a few of you did not seem to care about that particular detail. His voice drops and becomes cutting. Kirishima-kun. Yaozu-san. Todoroki-kun. Bakugo-kun. Ida-kun. These 5 went to go save Midoriya-kun that night. Izuku feels his breath freeze in his lungs. Beside him, Todoroki tenses up ever so slightly. The mood seems to turn in an instant, everyone going wide-eyed and glancing at each other in alarm. Aizawa watches their reactions with a piercing gaze before narrowing his eyes. And apparently the rest of you knew of this as well, he continues, making his displeasure clear with the drag of his low tone. His eyes flicker to the students that rescued Izuku, locking on each of them for a few seconds before he says, under normal circumstances, I would expel all of you, including your classmates who knew but didn't stop you. Izuku's heart leaps to his throat. He can't do that. That'd basically be the whole class, then, right? He can't do that, it's not fair. Yeah, they broke the rules, but they saved him, they rescued him, doesn't that count for something? They did what full-fledged heroes couldn't do. He wouldn't even be alive if it weren't for them. Aizawa knows this. What is he thinking? Defensive anger burns at his chest and he glares at the man, who unfortunately does not look his way. However, Aizawa says after a nerve-wracking pause, after all the criticism that has faced recently, and with the current unease in society due to the increase in villain activity, it would be unwise to expel you while you still have potential. A sigh of relief sweeps through the class. Don't think you are being let off easy. You 5 will be serving detention for a month, and you and the rest of your classmates will be turning in a 10-page essay on vigilantism by the end of next week. The sigh of relief turns into a groan. Wait, what about me? Shinsu asks. He and Hagakure had been knocked unconscious by the gas villain's quirk during the attack. Only those who knew about the rescue and didn't do anything to stop it will be punished, Aizawa mends. Shinsu and Hagakure fist bump. In the future, I would appreciate it if you could follow the rules and act properly in order to regain my trust. Aizawa turns and begins walking towards the dorm building. That is all. Let's go inside. Everyone stares after him, mood tense and somber. Izuku shifts uncomfortably, guilt stirring in his gut. He didn't think anyone would get into trouble for rescuing him. Now everyone's going to be miserable because of him. A yelp suddenly catches his attention. He glances over to see a very confused and panicked Kaminari being dragged away, behind the bushes by Kaken. A loud explosion and a bright flash of electricity later, and Kaminari walks back out with a dopey smile and a blank look in his eyes that makes him seem like he just got his brain scrambled. Izuku's jaw drops at the same time as Jiru bursts out laughing. Kaken. He scolds his friend as he reappears and puts down Sushi's crate so that he can rush over to Kaminari's side, grabbing his arms to hold him steady. You short-circuited him? Seriously? Relax, Izuku, Kaken grunts, brushing past him. Izuku glares lightly, watching as he saunters up to Kirishima and holds out some money. The redhead is confused at first, but Kaken barks, for the night vision goggles. You used up all your allowance, right? Huh? Oh, yeah. Kirishima blinks. But, that was to save Midoriya-kun. Man, you don't have to. Kaken cuts him off with a TSK. If you keep having to scrimp and save, then it'll make me feel bad. He's already turning away and stalking towards the dorms, shoulders hunched. Kirishima gazes after him in confusion, then glances down at the money in his hands, then glances at Izuku. The freckled boy doesn't know what's going on about the night vision goggles, but as he pauses and looks at Kaminari, who is still yaying in his grasp, he then notices the laughter rippling through his classmates. Gone is the gloomy mood from Aizawa's speech, instead replaced by the usual bright and happy atmosphere he's come to associate with Class 1A. A smile forms on his lips. Aw. Kakin was trying to make everyone feel better. Or, at least. He glances knowingly at Kirishima and catches him gazing after Kakin, a soft smile on his face. Then, the redhead's eyes lighten up and turns to the others, grinning tootily. Sorry, everyone. This won't make up for it. But let's all go eat yakiniku tonight with this money. Their classmates cheer at the promise of free food and, with attention eased, begin to trot after Aizawa into the dorm building. Izuku stays by Kaminari's side to help guide him, so Todoroki offers to carry Sushi's crate for him, which he greatly appreciates. If the cat notices that he's not being carried by his beloved owner, he doesn't make any vocal complaints about it. Aizawa begins showing them around Heights Alliance. The building is brand new, spacious, and just a little bit too luxurious for Izuku to know that it's going to take a while for him to feel comfortable with this. He doesn't seem to be the only one that feels this way. Uraraka practically faints a couple of times, which gives him something else to worry about. Thanks to his new diet, Kaminari snaps out of his short circuit soon enough, and Uraraka's fainting is more out of shock than anything. But really, can Izuku catch a break? At least Sushi might enjoy the bigger space. Izuku will have to make sure it's okay with the others, but he'd like to be able to let his cat have free range of the building rather than be cooped up in his room all day. Maybe he can install a flap in his door or something? He'll have to ask. After the tour, Aizawa tells them to unpack and get settled in their rooms before he leaves them to it. However, he pulls Izuku aside. If you ever need to see Recovery Girl after hours, the teacher's apartments are a couple minutes walk from the courtyard, he tells him. You might get caught by someone patrolling before you get there, but you won't get in trouble if there's an emergency. He blinks, slow and tired. Try not to have an emergency. Izuku winces and gives him a helpless smile. I mean, it's Class 1A. He shrugs as if to say, what can you do? Aizawa lets out a long, world-weary sigh and rubs his brow. Well, I'll be coming to check on you guys periodically throughout the night anyways, so just try not to have any disasters in the hours between then. Izuku frowns. Throughout the night? He tilts his head. Don't you need sleep too, sensei? A hand drops on top of his head and spins him around. Go unpack, Aizawa orders, giving him a little push. Huffing, Izuku glares over his shoulder, but Aizawa is already walking away. Grumbling under his breath, he begrudgingly picks up Sushi's carrier and opens the door to his new room. It's a nice size, plus it's already furnished, so he lets Sushi out while he begins the process of unpacking. All of his boxes and luggage are already here waiting for him, having been sent ahead earlier. Sushi fearlessly charges throughout the room, exploring every corner and sniffing for danger. Once he deems it to be safe, he starts jumping into the boxes as soon as Izuku empties them. Izuku repeatedly removes him while also trying to figure out where to put his stuff. Since he only has one, partially outdoor, cat, he has 2 litter boxes. Easy enough to keep in his room. He can put one in his bathroom and one next to his desk maybe. But if Sushi is going to have free reign of the dorm building, then maybe he should buy more? It would be awfully inconvenient if he was on another floor and needed to use the restroom or litter box, he should say. Sushi startles him by diving into another box and nearly knocking over his bag of litter. Sushi. Izuku scolds, picking up the giant lump of fur that tries to melt out of his arms and slip back into the box. I get that you're excited, but I have to unpack. Here. He reaches down with one hand and grabs a ball that makes a jingly noise. Go play. He tosses it lightly across the ground and Sushi perks up, wiggling out of his grip to go chase after the musical delight. Sighing, Izuku turns back to the boxes and continues unpacking. Even though he was worried about his teacher seeing his fanboy merch, he still kept his All Might sheets and comforter. They seemed subtle enough and hey, they're comfy, sue him. So he uses them to make his bed with. He absolutely does not put the posters up, but he does admit to himself that for a moment, he feels a bit tempted to. The walls just feel a little blank with nothing on them. But he holds out. He's going to be seeing All Might, Eraserhead, and Recovery Girl every day. He doesn't need to fall asleep to their faces too. Between having to hang some things and refolding others because he likes to keep things neat, putting his clothes away takes some time. He starts setting up his desk next, but Sushi gets bored with his toy and decides to start being a little shit. The feline hops up onto the desk and then knocks over whatever he sets down as soon as his back is turned. Sushi. Izuku frowns. What's gotten into you? Sushi is usually so well behaved, at least when it comes to listening to him. He shoos him away and throws another toy for him. After a moment of deliberation, he takes out his water and food dishes and fills them up. He manages to finish putting things on his desk and moves on to the bathroom. When he comes back, all of the items that he just set up are knocked to the ground and Sushi is sitting on his desk, washing his paws. Okay, that's it. Izuku marches over to him. You are going back into your carrier, mister. He reaches for Sushi, but the cat tenses up and leaps off the desk before he can grab him. The next couple of minutes consist of Izuku chasing Sushi around the dorm room, jumping over boxes and dodging sharp corners. It ends when Izuku stubs his toe hard and lets out a stream of curses under his breath, smacking his hand into the wall to stop himself from hitting it. Sushi disappears as Izuku grits his teeth, panting. Jerk, he rasps, glancing at the desk. Fine, whatever, I'll just do that last. He sighs tiredly, rubbing his eyes. Man, he really regrets not getting more sleep last night. What little energy he had at the beginning of the day has left him quickly. Even though it's been a week since Kamino, and even though he didn't overuse his quirk to the point of passing out like he did when he first healed All Might, Izuku still feels a lingering fatigue in his bones that has yet to go away. It gets less and less heavy every day, but it acts as a very clear reminder for him to never force his quirk like that ever again. He hasn't mentioned his persisting weariness to anyone, though. If Kakin notices his lack of energy, he probably assumes that it's because of the nightmares that keep him up at night. And the nightmares really aren't helping him feel better. At first, it was hard to tell whether or not Izuku's exhaustion was quirk-caused or was simply due to lack of sleep, but he's felt the draining effects of his own quirk practically every day of his life, so he knows the difference. Sighing again, Izuku glances at his shelves and figures that he might as well start filling it with his medical books. He's just bending down towards one of his boxes when a knock on his door stops him. Figuring that it's probably just Kakin, Izuku is not at all prepared when he opens the door to see Todoroki standing on the other side. Ignoring the way his heart somersaults, he smiles nervously and rasps, to Todoroki-kun. What can I do for you? Todoroki tilts his head. Fuck, why is that so cute ? And asks, are you alright? I heard a noise. Izuku blinks. Ah, right. His hand slapped the wall and Todoroki is his neighbor. Right. He forgot. Yeah, I'm alright. He stammers, scratching the back of his head. Sushi was just being annoying. Oh. Todoroki pauses ever so slightly, almost like he's hesitating, then says, well, I finished up early, actually. Do you need any help? Izuku feels his cheeks heat up. Todoroki in his room? Alone with him? Wait, no, that shouldn't be weird. They're friends. Todoroki is his friend and he's offering his help. That's not weird at all. Izuku is the one that's making things weird. Todoroki hasn't shown any indication that he's even acknowledged that the kiss happened. Huh. He hasn't, has he? All this time Izuku's been the one that's freaking out about their kiss, but Todoroki has been acting as if Nothing even happened. Maybe he's been waiting for a moment to talk in private? Maybe that's what this is? Izuku's intestines suddenly twist themselves into a jumbled up knot of nerves. Sure, he squeaks, voice cracking. He clears it, wincing, then glances over his shoulder. Sushi stands dead center in the middle of the room, staring at Todoroki with an intense gaze. A light bulb goes off in Izuku's head. Actually, if you could keep Sushi entertained while I unpack, that would be great. Todoroki blinks. Izuku steps aside and lets him into the room. He's been kind of excitable what with being in a new environment and all, so I've been getting distracted trying to keep him out of trouble. He seemed to like you well enough the last couple of times you came to my house, so if you could just play with him for a little bit while I finish up here, that would be great. I only have a few things left to do, and oh, his toys are over there. Sushi stares at Todoroki with a cold yellow gaze the entire time as Izuku ushers him over to sit on his bed. Okay, Izuku may have exaggerated the cat's fondness for Todoroki. Sushi sniffed him once and didn't attack or hiss. Just because he's indifferent towards Todoroki doesn't mean he likes him. But Izuku likes Todoroki, so surely Sushi, who loves his dear owner with every inch of his being, could find it within himself to do the same. Todoroki, meanwhile, is looking way out of his depths, staring down at the pile of cat toys at his feet. He says, I've never really played with a cat before. Izuku imagines Endeavor and Sushi, or any cat, for that matter, being in the same room together, and thinks, yeah, no surprise there. After giving Todoroki a quick rundown on cat toys and their individual uses, he lets the boy try on his own. Sushi is still a bit skeptical of this newcomer encroaching on the territory he has just claimed, but Todoroki manages to distract him with a feather teaser. With his cat now occupied, Izuku turns and starts putting his books on his bookshelf. Silence fills the room, the only sounds being those of Sushi's assault on the feather teaser. Izuku swallows, awkward discomfort stirring in his chest. Should he be the first to say something? What would he even say? Hey, how about that kiss? God, so stupid. No, he should wait for Todoroki to say something. He decided he was going to go with the flow, didn't he? If Todoroki wants to pursue something with him, then he'd say something. And if not, then he won't. But he came here for a reason, right? Izuku sneaks a glance at the other boy. He's watching Sushi obliterate the clump of feathers at the end of his string, a soft, amused smile on his face. It makes Izuku's already elevated heart rate speed up. He looks so strange without his scar. Strange, almost unrecognizable, but still unfairly handsome. Even more so, actually. Izuku has created a monster. Stifling a longing sigh, he turns back to the bookshelf and completely misses the way Todoroki peeks up at him from beneath his bangs. The silence continues on as Izuku empties his box of books. He tries to be patient, but anxiety is killing him. When he finally hears a small intake of breath from Todoroki, a thrill of anticipation tickles his chest. So, what kind of cat is he? Disappointment hits him cold and hard. Izuku struggles to keep his voice neutral as he replies, Maine Coon. It still comes out flat. Todoroki nods and says nothing else. Izuku gazes at him for a moment, then turns and starts taking out more minor decorations. If he thought the silence was bad, then Todoroki's pathetic attempts at small talk are 10 times worse. And now it's undeniable that it is small talk. There will be horribly awkward breaks of silence, and then Todoroki will ask something about Izuku's cat, and honestly, Izuku has never given less of a shit about answering random questions about Sushi before in his life. Any other time, he'd love to spend hours talking about his beloved feline, but right now? At least Todoroki seems to get the message pretty quickly. Maybe it's Izuku's short, clipped responses, or perhaps he can just hear the way his teeth are grinding from across the room. Either way, he stops with the small talk soon enough, and the silence returns. Izuku presses his lips together as he folds up a spare blanket. He glances over his shoulder, but Todoroki isn't even looking his way, eyes fixed on the stupid cat toy. A pang of disappointment makes his heart clench and he quickly turns away. So, he guesses Todoroki doesn't want to talk about the kiss then? Doesn't want to acknowledge it at all. Are they just going to keep pretending it didn't happen? That's fine, Izuku supposes. They can do that. They're still friends at the end of the day. But heterochromatic eyes filling every inch of his vision, burning with a protective rage. Soft lips wet with blood and tears pressing against his over and over like he can't get enough, chasing after him when he pulls away. Izuku clenches his jaw, ignoring the burning in his eyes as he puts down the folded blanket with more force than necessary. He liked it. And he likes Todoroki. He likes the butterflies he gives him and he likes that he makes him feel safe and tried to make him feel better about his scars and he's so strong and pretty and kind and he saved Izuku and kissed him and damn it, is it wrong to think that there was something more behind that? Izuku shrinks in on himself, uncertainty curling in his stomach. Todoroki looked so happy afterwards, but maybe he doesn't want anything after all? It was such an emotional night. Maybe it was just a heat of the moment kind of thing? He probably thought about it more later and realized that he doesn't have feelings for him. And now he's saving him the embarrassment of having to have a talk about why they're better off as friends by just ignoring the incident entirely and trying to salvage their friendship. And Izuku is ruining that by getting all emotional about it. Shaking his head, he takes a deep breath and forces down his bitter disappointment. Stop. Enough of this. Is he upset that Todoroki doesn't want to be with him? Yes. A little. He can admit that to himself. But he can't do anything to change that. He shouldn't even try, because that might jeopardize the friendship he still has with Todoroki. He can't risk losing that. As much as it might hurt at first, Izuku will treasure any time Todoroki is willing to spend with him. He's just grateful the other boy values their friendship enough to not let this kiss get in the way of it. And Izuku will not let his feelings for Todoroki get in the way of it either. Besides, it's totally unprofessional too. Todoroki is a hero in training and his patient. Izuku is sure there's some rule out there about healers not being allowed to date their patients. Probably. And with all the work he has to do, when would he even have time for a relationship? No, this is for the best, really. He likes Todoroki, but he shouldn't let himself become distracted from his goal. A bitter smile forms on his lips and he huffs slightly. Hey, he really went over his head there for a moment, huh? He needs to stop worrying so much. Putting up the last item, he turns back towards Todoroki and rasps, "Alright, I think I'm done. What do you think?" Todoroki tears his gaze away from a feathery murder scene and glances around. "Looks good," he says after a moment. His mouth opens, then closes, then opens again before he says stiffly, "I like your books." Izuku glances at said books. They're his medical ones, all with various boring covers. He can't think of a single reason why Todoroki of all people would like them. "Thanks," he says anyway. "I know you can look up pretty much anything on the internet, but I always like having a physical book to read off of. They're pretty dry, but I've read them like a million times." He laughs a little and scratches the back of his head. It probably seems a little nerdy. Todoroki perks up, probably because that's the most he's ever responded to his terrible attempts at small talk. "Not at all," he says a little too loudly, then catches himself, glancing away. "Well, I guess a little bit, but it's a good thing, trust me." Izuku flushes lightly and smiles. Now that Todoroki isn't playing with him anymore, Sushi seems to have remembered that there's an actual person at the other end of the feather teaser and has resumed glaring at the boy. Taking that as their cue to leave, Izuku suggests, "Should we go downstairs and join the others, then?" "Sure." Todoroki gets up, and to Izuku's immense amusement, gives a little bow of his head to Sushi. "Goodbye, Sushi-san. Thank you for letting me play with you." Mitsushi looks as bewildered as a cat can be. Seeing such a strong, stoic, and aloof boy bowing politely to his cat is such an amusing sight that it fills Izuku's chest with warm bubbly light. And He doesn't even realize how silly it is. That just adds even more to the adorableness of the situation. If he and Todoroki are going to be just friends, then Izuku needs to stop putting him and adorable in the same thoughts. It shouldn't be too hard. Todoroki just needs to stop doing cute things. This is fine. Let's go, he says weakly, turning to lead the way out of his room. Todoroki follows after him. As they step into the hallway, Izuku glances to his left at Kaken's door. While it's a great relief to have his best friend so close by, a small, humorous part of him wonders how much he had to bribe Aizawa with in order to get the dorm next to him. He certainly wants to know what the man was thinking when he made Todoroki his neighbor too. Kaken and Todoroki living on the same floor? Really, Aizawa? And he put Izuku between them as if he'll act like some sort of buffer. Yeah right, thanks. At least Ida is here too. Izuku isn't quite sure where he stands in Kaken's eyes, but hopefully the blonde respects him as vice class rep, or at least recognizes that he's one of the strongest in the class. Wait a minute. Izuku blinks. Todoroki, Kaken, Ida. On the girls' side, there's Asui and Yaozu. Izuku's dorm is on the 3rd floor, surrounded by arguably the strongest members of Class 1A. His eyes narrow. He's going to assume that it's probably not a coincidence he was placed in the part of the building that would be the safest in the event of an attack. A soft sigh escapes his lips. Todoroki glances at him. You alright? Oh, it's nothing. He waves him off and presses the button for the elevator. Resignation settles heavy in his chest. He supposes he should have expected something like this happening. He has been worried about how his classmates have been coping with everything in the aftermath of Kamino. If they felt guilty after the mall incident, then he can't even begin to imagine how horrible they must be feeling now. And he doesn't know how to help them. He could say that he's okay, but he's not, and they'd see right through him if he lied to them anyway. They need to cope with this somehow, and if being overprotective helps them do that, then of course he'll let them. It doesn't matter if it makes him feel just a little bit smothered. He'd do anything to make them feel better. It's the least he could do after causing them so much pain in the first place. He and Todoroki meet up with some of the other boys in the lounge on the 1st floor. After chatting for a bit, the girls approach them with the idea for a room decorating contest. The next hour is pretty fun, and it's interesting to see how his classmates' personalities come out in the way they decorate their dorms. Although, he's definitely glad that he didn't put up those posters now. Kaminari makes a comment about his All Might comforter that has his face turn red. He can't imagine what his friends would say if they saw all the other merch he still has hidden away in his boxes. Those that haven't already get to meet Sushi too. The feline stays perched atop his dresser, deciding to watch everyone with a regal gaze from afar now that he's outnumbered. Hagakure loudly deems him to be cute and the others seem to have no problem with him roaming free around the building when Izuku asks. Koda assures him that he plans on keeping his rabbit inside his room most of the time anyways. The only weird thing that happens is when they reach Todoroki's room. A Japanese-style room? Was his made differently? How did you remodel it in a day? Todoroki remains expressionless. I worked hard. Izuku gapes at him, then shakes his head. Wait a minute, you even finished early to help me. Todoroki pauses. I worked really hard. Izuku and Kaminari glance at each other, then Kaminari nervously steps away from Todoroki. While he's not very interested in the competition, and he most certainly does not expect to win, Izuku has been idly considering who he's going to be casting his vote for. The fact that Todoroki was able to renovate his room in such a short amount of time is impressive, but Izuku is also very aware of his own internal bias in regards to the bicolored boy. However, His decision is practically made for him when Sato's room is presented and the heavenly aroma of his baked goods reaches his nose. A chiffon cake? All the girls and Izuku moan and lick their lips as they eat the fresh slices of pastry that Sato hands them. It's delicious. So fluffy. What a wonderful hobby you have, Sato-kun. I didn't expect everyone to like it so much. Sato stammers. Izuku groans as he bites into the warm cake. Oh my god, Sato-kun, I think I'm in love. Sato turns beet red and scratches the back of his neck. Kirishima laughs